up, pussies? Sorry, I've been watching the Vince McMahon documentary and it's got me all fired up. Excuse the clothing in the background, that's now going to be a regular fixture. We've got mould growing in the house and therefore we need to dry our clothes in a very specific area. And I had to buy a dehumidifier. Anyway, you didn't care about that. I don't even care about that. Let's talk about the subject of today's video, shall we? So, autumn internationals are coming round and I will be covering every single England game other than maybe the Japan one I couldn't give a shit about. The squad has been announced and there's been some glaring omissions, so I thought, what a better time to talk about my ideal 15, compare that to what I think Borthwicks is probably going to put on the pitch, and also let's talk about some honourable mentions of people that weren't involved in the squad and how the difference would be made in terms of who should be starting and who shouldn't. So, I'm going to start with talking about the honourable mentions, people that are not within this squad that should be. First of all, there's a couple of omissions from Bristol Bears.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
These are two Gabriels, Gabriel Ibitoye, who I think is the obvious choice that everyone seems to have made that, saying, why isn't this guy in the squad? Pretty much unstoppable on the wing. But the other one that I don't think a lot of people are talking about is Gabriel Oghre. I think it's Oghre, not 100% sure. But this guy's been playing undeniably great rugby. He's been playing at hooker for Bristol. He's been keeping Harry Thacker out of the team because Harry Thacker started the season injured, but he's only now coming on and being able to replace him for certain amounts of time. And he's wonderful to watch. He gets the basics right in terms of the scrum, line out, everything like that. But he's also a wonderful runner with the ball, and defensively, he's also very quick. He's one of these hookers that is so mobile that you get basically another back rower on the pitch, and also with the ball skills of someone who could possibly play 8 as well. But you've got that in the front row, and you don't take anything away in terms of ability of doing the tight stuff in terms of scrum and line out. So, don't know why he wasn't included. Probably should have been. Bit of a omission considering we're also a little bit slight on those front rowers. And speaking of front rowers, another honourable mention, Afolabi Fasogbon. Probably got the name wrong 100% again. But again, this guy has been taking the Premiership by storm. He obviously had his very famous matchup against Ellis Genge against Bristol Bears, where he waved him goodbye when he was coming off the pitch, which was obviously very entertaining. However, I've watched this guy live now at Leicester Tigers versus Gloucester last weekend, and I can tell you, bro is huge. Like, the dude is massive, right? And he is kind of the potential that we have been crying out for guys to come in and replace players like Joe Marler and Dan Cole, who are now becoming older and older. He's still a bit raw, so I would have liked him to be in the squad, but not necessarily start. And there's obviously the other glaring omission from this squad as well, which is Tom Willis. He has been an absolute menace for Saracens, who I'll be watching playing Leicester later on, and I really wouldn't be surprised if Tom Willis is starting if he makes an absolute mess of our defensive line. His ball carrying has been superb. He's been making tackles all over the pitch. Glaring omission. Don't know why he's not in the squad. Is it because, Jack Willis is playing in France and we can't have one Willis without the other? I've no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me why he's not within the squad. I wouldn't necessarily be starting him, as I'll get into later on, but he's been playing his way into this squad for the first few games of the Premiership, and it's a glaring omission in my opinion. So without further ado, let's get into my 15, starting with the front rowers. I've got Finn Baxter, Jamie George and Trevor Davison. Finn Baxter had a trial by fire by not starting, but coming on for an injured Joe Marler during the tests against New Zealand, and he probably came in a little bit quicker than everyone was expecting for him to have to be on the pitch. But he swam, he was put in a situation where he could swim or sink or swim, and he swam. And he's probably one of Harlequin's best players as well. He fits the culture there as well in terms of playing quickly, having decent hands for a front rower as well. And if you're comparing him to the other loose head choice that we have within the squad in terms of Ellis Genge, I just feel like Ellis Genge has just lost a little bit of edge in his ball carrying. And he has also been out scrummaged, as I said, by a youngster earlier in the season as well. Finn Baxter has continued his great form in for Harlequins, and he's playing great rugby. There's no reason he shouldn't be in that one shirt. Jamie George at hooker, I expect him to probably be the captain as well. I feel like the team has played well with him being captain, with Owen Farrell leaving. Not too much to say about this. I think maybe the other likely replacement within the squad, other than Jamie George, that could come in and play is Theo Dan, who's his replacement. But for experience and a captaincy role, whether it's him or someone else in the pitch that I'll talk about later in terms of captaincy, Although, as I said, the captaincy has been successful under Jamie George. I would have him at hooker. Trevor Davison, he's mainly in there because the only other choices are Will Stewart and Dan Cole. And although I think Will Stewart's played better in the Premiership to start of this year, I still don't think he's quite there for me. I think Trevor Davison, even though he has less caps, has been really good for Northampton. He also has a flexibility of being able to change to loose head if required. Not so sure how that will work out at international level, but have Trevor Davison in there to kind of shore up that scrum. I know he's not that experienced at international level, but I still would be picking him over Dan Coles and Will Stewart. But at the same time, it kind of highlights a true weakness, I think, in this England side is that tight head shirt. There's just this the players are either too old or they're not quite at the level that we want them to be in terms of international superstars. And it would scream to me why Fasogbon should maybe be within the squad to develop some younger talent. Moving on to the second rows, then we've got, for me, George Martin and Maro Itoje. I think there's a lot of people that could come into these shirts as well. Ollie Chessum is another one. Charlie Ewells, I think, has been fantastic for Bath. Nick Ezekwe's come on at really key moments for Saracens and played well as well. I just think the mixture of Itoje and Martin back there in the second rows gives you a couple of things. You've got two great line-out options with both of those two. But I think Maro Itoje is probably more of like your more hybrid-y kind of loose forward that can play like six as well, does the turnovers all over the pitch. And George Martin is you're very much like your hard grafter, puts his head to the grindstone, does all the dirty stuff that doesn't get a whole lot of credit. And I think maybe if you were putting Chessum in there with Maro Itoje, you've got more like and like, whereas with Martin, you probably got a little bit of difference in terms of how you have a little bit of difference in terms of the talents that you have in that second row shirt. So moving into the back row, pretty much unchanged from the series in New Zealand. At 6, we've got Chandler Cunningham-South. At 7, we have Sam Underhill. And 8, we have Ben Earl. Now, this is probably, for me, one of my more controversial picks and things that I was debating in my head, mainly because Sam Underhill's only really kind of come back from injury recently, so trying to chuck him straight into an international team this soon after injury is maybe not the best idea. However, he is, I think, the best out-and-out 7 that England have at the moment. He's a true open side, but also at the same time can tackle like a blind side. Chandler Cunningham-South is obviously leaps and bounds in terms of his development, and I'm of the opinion that he just needs as much game time as possible to make him the best possible player that he can be. He doesn't make glaring mistakes at his young age where you think he's a bit raw or anything. He doesn't really make those. There's no reason he should not be starting at 6 every single game because of how well he's played for international level. Like, he just needs more and more and more game time so that we can make this guy one of the best players in the world. He has the potential to be that, I think, in about 5 or 6 years' time. Ben Earl at 8, again, there are other choices here. As I said, Tom Willis. Alex Dombrandt has been playing very well for Quins, although I never really feel like that's translated to the international level. So I understand why Dombrandt wouldn't be picked there and Earl would be picked there. But Earl has obviously done a massive job in developing his ball carrying ability as well as his ability to play 7 and do the jackling as well. So I think, yeah, that's an obvious selection for me at 8. So moving into the outside halves, Marcus Smith, I talked about in a previous video, he's my selection for starting at 10. I think it's his shirt to lose at this point. He had some great games against New Zealand, and I think he's keeping other fly halves such as Finn Smith out of the team, and George Ford is obviously injured. And at 9, I've gone for Harry Randall. This is a really interesting Autumn Nations series for England in terms of their scrum half selection, because Alex Mitchell has unfortunately had an injury. He has played really, really well for England, so I don't want to take anything away from the fact that, I've been waiting for more people to come in and take his place. But England at the moment have a lot of really good scrum halves coming in, and the two that are of major note for me are Harry Randall and Ben Spencer. Jack Van Portfleet is also in the team, although I don't think his performances have been at the same level as Harry Randall and Ben Spencer. But I just think Harry Randall adds something that Ben Spencer doesn't quite have in terms of just like that rapid fire, let's go, 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 go. Ben Spencer is a little bit more cerebral, thinks about the game better, controls the game better, and in certain situations you may want Ben Spencer on there. I just think Harry Randall has started this season on fire in terms of attacking prowess, and I think that it could really match well with Marcus Smith as well in that regard. Getting into the centres here, so this is again another interesting part of the England team for this Autumn Nations series. Ollie Lawrence has been playing for Bath at an exceptional level this year. Every game it feels like he could be winning man of the match. Again, in the New Zealand series, he's been playing fantastically at that 12 shirt. I think keep him at 12, and there's no question about that in my eyes, and I don't think that would be in a lot of people's eyes. The 13 shirt is a bit of a question. So Henry Slade has played very well at England for that 13 shirt, but he hasn't played any time for Exeter at the moment due to injury. I think he's playing his first game back this weekend, so it'd be interesting to see how he does. But I don't think there's any sense in rushing him back to put him in that 13 shirt for an Autumn Nations series where there's no like silverware at the end of it. I think this is a chance to test out different options that we have at this 13 shirt. And for me, I think we should be playing Tommy Freeman there. The reason for that is that I think the other choices that we have at outside centre here, I'm not too keen on. Alex Lozowski has been brought into the side for obvious reasons because I think he's quite a big comparison to Henry Slade in terms of how he plays, and he also has that big outside left foot for clearances that I think is a bit of a sneaky way that England keep great territory that people don't talk about a lot. They really rely on that left boot. I think Elliot Daly's also in the team for that very same reason, to play that outside centre shirt. But for me, I think we should be really just sort of hammering down into ball carrying and power running, and Freeman has been playing at 13 for Northampton to allow Hendy and Ollie Sleightholme on the wing. It's just kind of fitting talent into this team as much as possible, and I think Freeman is a big dude. He can play that 13 shirt. My only question would be Freeman playing 13, defensive responsibilities, the differences of a defensive responsibilities of a 13 to a 12, a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for here? There's more requirement for them. It's a much more, not important position, but it's more difficult to understand the defensive responsibilities of a 13 shirt. And he's been caught out of position a couple of times. I'm thinking one with Marcus Smith when he went running for the try on that outside centre position. So yeah, it's interesting. Maybe he's not been picked there. Maybe he won't get picked there for those reasons. But I just think, power running style, the rest of this team would really benefit from just, getting over the gain line and having quick ball, power running. Let's go, man. Let's put him in that 13 shirt. Speaking about Tommy Freeman, it really leads into who I've selected in this back three of the wingers and the fullback. Ollie Sleightholme on the pitch, and also Immanuel Feyi-Waboso. Ollie Sleightholme, obviously less England time, but playing very well for Northampton. And Feyi-Waboso, probably one of the first names in the team sheet for England. Even though Exeter have not won a game this year, he seems to be scoring pretty much every week with some try or run that's incredible. And it's obvious that teams are having to play him and try and contain him and make sure he doesn't have any space. But the moment he gets a piece of space, he makes a run. So yeah, he's straight in the team. And obviously 15 with George Furbank really had a bit of a renaissance in his England career. We're playing in the Six Nations toward the end last year and playing against New Zealand in that series. He seems to have bulked up. That seems to have made a difference. It's not affected his pace. And he really is kind of the informed 15 for England at the moment. Freddie Stewart is playing much better, but I just don't think Freddie Stewart offers you the same kind of in-line, attacking the line at the right point of time, counter-attacking ability that George Furbank does. So yeah, I think it's Furbank's shirt to lose at this point in that 15 jersey. And just running through the bench as well, Theo Dan, Joe Marler, Dan Cole. Theo Dan is obviously less experienced, but is played in England, so he's a great replacement. And Joe Marler and Dan Cole are very experienced props that you can bring on to close out a game. Ollie Chessum, Tom Curry, same, mix of experience and also youth, but both of them are very experienced at international level. And there's a lot of interchangeability in terms of how I've selected the team in terms of back rows can go to second rows back rows, flankers can play eights, etc. So I've tried to build mobility into both the squad that I put on the pitch and also the bench. And in the backs, Ben Spencer, Finn Smith and Henry Slade. Henry Slade on the bench maybe is because he can only really play 13 from what I know, from what I've seen. But I think I've put in enough flexibility within that back line that, maybe Henry Slade comes in, Tommy Freeman goes to the wing, or, maybe Finn Smith comes in at fly half, Marcus Smith moves to 15, Furbank comes off. I've tried to build a level of flexibility where game styles can change, as well as also having positions that can be filled by multiple people, whether they're starting on the pitch or whether they're on the bench. So that's my team. So how do I think Borthwick will select his team differently? I think maybe he'll pick Marler and Stewart at prop instead of Baxter and Davison. Marler, obviously very, very experienced. And you'll probably look to bring Baxter on at probably like the 60-minute mark or something, just to kind of ease Finn Baxter into international rugby a little bit more. He may feel he's a little bit overexposed at this point, especially because he had to come on for an injured Marler for a full game against New Zealand. And he just has to he seems to have a fondness for Will Stewart at tight head prop as well, which I can understand. He's a very big guy, But, you know, yeah, I just think that Will Stewart will probably be starting in that 3 shirt. I don't think it will be Dan Cole. For those of you that haven't, you know, I don't blame you for this unless you're a Leicester Tigers fan, but Dan Cole's struggling to start for Leicester at this point. Joe Hayes seems to be the on and on starting tight head for Leicester at this point, and it's starting to seem like, you know, Dan Cole's starting to wind back his career a little bit, have to be on the bench. He's probably very happy to be in this England team, but it doesn't make much sense to me for him to be starting at 3 when he can't even start for his own club at this point. So, yeah, I would see Will Stewart probably starting at tight head with Borthwick's selection. I could also see Borthwicks selecting Chessum rather than George Martin. Again, those of you that haven't been watching Leicester at an intent level that I have, George Martin's been out with injuries, in and out. Chessum's been there. He's probably a little bit more healthy. And as I said, even though you don't have the juxtaposition of Martin Grafter, Itoje, more your loose forward kind of guy, and you'll just kind of have 2 loose forwards playing second row, he has been healthier. So I could see why Chessum might start in that second row instead of George Martin. I also think that Borthwick will probably force Jack Van Portfleet into that 9 shirt rather than Harry Randall. He's just played a lot under Borthwick's schemes, both at Leicester when they won the Premiership, and he's always been included in the squad for England, and Borthwick has selected him while he's not been injured as well. So, yeah, I could see Van Portfleet starting at 9, even though if you're picking it on form, I definitely think he's playing not the best out of the 3 of the scrum halves that have been selected, and I think this is an exciting time for either Ben Spencer or Harry Randall to be starting in that 9 shirt. And yeah, finally, I think the other difference that Borthwick will probably make to this selection is instead of putting Tommy Freeman at 13, he'll probably put him on the wing and try and force Slade into that 13 shirt, even though he's only just come back from injury. I would say either Slade's going to start there, or Elliot Daly, or Lazowski, because they're all kind of pretty interchangeable players in terms of what they offer with their left boot. And that it gives a great clearance option for England. So just because it's more of a system, I think that's probably why you'll see either one of those 3 playing. I definitely think Slade's the preferable option, but it's really going to depend, I think, on how Slade plays this weekend, how much game time he gets for Exeter in his first game back from injury. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if one of those 3 gets selected instead of 13 of Freeman that I've selected. And finally, how would the honourable mentions that I mentioned at the beginning of the video change my team? Well, for me personally, I'd have Oghre starting for Bristol Bears. I think he's been that good. I think he's been like a great ball carrier. I can't get enough of this guy, and it's a real shame that he's not in the squad. He would be starting for me, if I'm honest. And I would also have Ibitoye starting on the wing. Instead of having Ollie Sleightholme on that wing, I'd keep Freeman in that 13 shirt, and I'd have Ibitoye on the wing with Feyi-Waboso. He's been unstoppable for Bristol. Seriously, I don't know why this guy's not in the team, especially for Autumn Nations where nothing's really up for grabs and you can develop some players. Willis and Fasogbon, I'd probably put them on the bench. I wouldn't be starting them. For me, for Willis, he doesn't have the same experience as the other 3 that are all in form and playing very well for me in my front 3. But I definitely would be looking to bring him on at like the 60-minute mark, to put on some fresh legs and give him the experience he needs as well, and see how he does in an international shirt. And Fasogbon, again, as I said, he did get out scrummaged last weekend against Leicester. So, but you know, he's got such potential at his young age. I would be putting him on the bench, and I would be having Davison on the pitch so that, you know, you don't have to emergency bring on Fasogbon if one of the props get injured. But I would bring on Fasogbon at like that 65 or 70-minute mark and just, you know, give him 10-15 minutes of international experience every game and get him just, you know, because the dude's massive. He's got great his technique for scrummaging is great. You know, he's just a bit raw, and putting him in the international setup at this stage and just getting him introduced into that as soon as possible. You know, it's worked so well with Chandler Cunningham-South. I just think, why not? But, you know, it's not my decision to make. And that's it for me. That's my team. That's how Borthwick will probably play it differently. And that's also how my honourable mentions, I think, would change if they were included in the squad. So let me know what you think. Kind of excited for this Autumn Nations series. I think it's going to be some interesting selections across the pitch, whether it's for injury or for people moving on in terms of like retirement, etc. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.